Hi, Joe Gersch from Secure64 with another video about DNSSEC. In our earlier video we talked about how important it was to do DNSSEC, and in this one I'd like to talk about how would you actually go about, what are your choices for implementing DNSSEC. There are various methods that I'll go into in a moment, but before we talk about the methods, let's talk about your objectives. What are your requirements in your organization to do DNSSEC? Here's some examples that we think are quite important. First of all, the need for simplicity. Do you already have the expertise in DNSSEC? Or do you need training? Do you need to read a lot? Do you have the people, the time, and the dollars to invest to make this happen? Do you have the process discipline? DNSSEC is not something you just do once. It's something you have to do on a very regular, rigorous basis, and you have to have a discipline to make sure it happens correctly each and every time. Security. Do you have a need for high security or higher security? You can't do this with low security because you never want your keys compromised, so what is your security model? Performance. Do you have just a few static zones that don't change? Do you have huge zones? Do you have lots of zones that change very often? That's going to dictate a lot about what kind of DNSSEC deployment model you use. And finally, auditability. Do you have an audit trail? Do you have a need to keep logs of all the things you've done because of HIPAA or other kinds of government requirements? Looking at these four kinds of requirements, we can now look at the choices for implementing DNSSEC. And the first choice is do it yourself. Do it yourself is just what it says. You go and get the scripts and the open source tools and so forth, integrate them together into your particular environment, make it work for you so you have a lot of learning to do and a lot of integration. How much learning? Well, DNSSEC isn't simple, so you better do a lot of reading. You've got good books, however, to help you. There's things like Cricket Lou's book on DNS and Bind. There's books like the Pro DNS and Bind book from Ron Aitchison. It's got a whole chapter dedicated to learning about DNSSEC. And you've got lots of resources on the web as well. For example, this is the NIST document on how to deploy secure DNS. A lot of reading to do, it's a learning curve, so as far as the do-it-yourself model, I'd have to give simplicity not a very good grade. It's a complex thing. However, it's doable. There's been a lot of people that have done it. How about security? Well, basically, since Linux, even when hardened, isn't very secure, you have to do this in an offline model. The box has to be away from the internet so that it's not if the keys get stolen, when the keys get stolen. You have to do this offline, which means transporting sign files between an offline and an online machine. Since it's offline, you cannot work with a really dynamic environment. It's got to be relatively small files that are static. As far as the audit trail goes, that's why it's called do-it-yourself. You're the one keeping the logs. Now again, this doesn't mean it's a bad method. It just says, here's the limitations. A few static files not changing, offline keys and so forth with offline signing. But people do it this way, and it makes sense for those kinds of organizations. What would be some driving forces that would move you to the next model? The next model being do-it-yourself with a hardware security module, HSM, also more simply known as a crypto card such as this one. This card you can plug into your Linux box. It keeps the keys very secure, which means now instead of being offline, you can be online. With online keys, that gives you greater degrees of freedom. Now you can have dynamic data. You can have lots of zones. You can have these zones change on a frequent basis, and you can re-sign things because you don't have to transport things between different machines. It doesn't do anything for your audit trail. It's still manual. But you've paid a bit of a cost in complexity. In fact, it's gotten a bit more complex than the previous model because now you've got to not only do the scripts and the learning, you've got to learn how the HSM card works and how to integrate it into those scripts. So you've got a great advantage at the cost of a bit more complexity and learning curve. The third model for doing DNSSEC is with an automated product such as the one from Secure64 Corporation. In this case, you've got the same advantages, online keys because they're secure. It's a very secure model. You can have dynamic data. You get a side benefit. Instead of doing manual logs, the box will do it for you. The really big advantage here is that what you get is DNSSEC in a box. This is something you basically say DNSSEC on, and you set it and forget it. It will do the signing, it will do the re-signing, it will do the key rollover, it will do the process discipline for you. You don't have to do any of that thing. So you've gotten a great advantage in the simplicity factor by going to an automated product. Now all three of these are reasonable solutions for different things. These are the types of capabilities you have for each one of these columns. If you would like additional details, I encourage you to visit the online Secure64 DNSSEC Resource Center and learn for yourself the various advantages and capabilities of each one of these solutions. Thank you very much.